As Hitler is rising to power in Germany, Britain is being run by a coalition government, with the Tory party and its leader Stanley Baldwin effectively in charge. MPs of all parties are united in one thing: their horror of another war. Images of the last war still haunt the public's memory. Many Britons are declared pacifists. Almost all are in favor of disarmament. Except Winston Churchill. Churchill is an elected Tory with 20 years of cabinet experience, but now he's excluded from the cabinet. He's thought to be a has-been who is out of touch with modern realities.
Military weakness in this country encourages potential enemies.
When Churchill speaks out about defending Britain against the rising Nazi menace, few listen.
Churchill was written off as a warmonger. I mean, that was the thing to call Churchill, was a warmonger, because he wanted to think in terms of fighting and war.
The Duke and Duchess of Windsor came to visit the new Germany.
At the same time as Hitler is busy rearming and persecuting the Jews, a stream of British notables travels to Germany to pay him homage. Not only the Duke and Duchess of Windsor pay a respectful call, so does Lord Halifax, a member of the cabinet. The British government believes that by befriending prominent Nazis, it can use them as a shield against the threat of Russian communism. Hitler has stamped out communism in Germany. Now he might aim the military machine he's so quickly rebuilding toward the east. The courtship of Hitler by British dignitaries, including former Prime Minister David Lloyd George, amazes and discourages his opponents at home, like Karl Goerdeler.
My father was angry how Hitler was greeted by everybody, by the statesmen of Europe, and that he got all the honors of statesmen. And for my father, I think he was already something like criminal.
For Winston Churchill, Hitler is a tyrant who is not to be trusted, and he says so. So Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin passes him over again for a cabinet position. If I pick Winston, he says, Hitler will be cross. Sir Robert Van Sittert is one British official who shares Churchill's view of Adolf Hitler. Van Sittert is a prominent bureaucrat who is in charge of the Foreign Office. For years, he's been passing along to the cabinet alarming and accurate information about Hitler and the Nazis, but to little effect.
Industrialists, journalists, bankers, people in Britain, again, solid citizens, were going over to Germany, and they were coming back and they were putting in incredible reports of what was really like inside Nazi Germany and what was going on and what how the people were suffering under the yoke and how unstable the country was. I mean, you read these reports and you cannot fathom why they made no impression whatsoever.
Van Sittert's most valued informant is the German conspirator Karl Goerdeler. Van Sittert describes him as impressive, wise, and weighty. Through Goerdeler, Van Sittert learns that the German military, though rearming fast, is not yet strong enough to win a battle over Czechoslovakia, and that Hitler must be treated firmly now, while there's still time. But the new Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, turns an even deafer ear to Van Sittert's warnings than his predecessor.
We simply had to build...
Chamberlain is a former businessman who was Chancellor of the Exchequer under Baldwin.
It'll involve an expenditure of some hundreds of millions of pounds, but it will all be spent in the country.
He knows more about balancing budgets than he knows about foreign policy. But Chamberlain is firmly convinced that he can manage Hitler by compromising. The public backs him up.
Britain has always had the uncanny power, when crisis and danger have threatened our lives, of being able to produce the man of the moment.
Chamberlain didn't want any advice from Van Sittert, and he didn't want to hear about opposition inside Germany, because all they were doing was rocking this boat that he wanted to sail into calmer waters. They were just getting in the way of his plans. He would handle things himself, and he didn't want any interference, he didn't want any advice.
Instead of listening to Van Sittert, Chamberlain prefers to rely on the questionable judgment of his ambassador in Germany, Neville Henderson. Henderson is bewitched by his new Nazi friends, according to a colleague. He particularly admires Hermann Göring. Incredibly, Henderson tells Chamberlain to disregard the warnings from Germany because they come from anti-Nazis and are therefore unreliable.
Neville Henderson was impressed by the pageantry and by the organization and discipline and the uniforms and the marches and so forth. He didn't see the dangers. He didn't see the perniciousness of the German regime. He was a hindrance for a firmer position on the part of the British government for many months leading up to the crisis.
So in the summer and fall of 1938, as the conspirators fine-tune their plans to topple Hitler, they worry that Chamberlain isn't yet ready to take a strong enough stand. Some of them risk their lives on personal missions to London to beg the British government to speak up now and stop Hitler.